Welcome to Just Minding My Business Radio, where we are moving at the speed of God, learning what we didn't know we didn't know. I'm your host, Ida Crawford.
And I'm your co-host, Ruth Haskins.
So grab a pen and paper and get ready for information that you can use.
X your business starting today with digital marketing from Just Minding My Business Media, LLC on JMMB Media TV or Mindset Movers TV. jmmbradio@gmail.com. Welcome to Just Minding My Business Media, LLC. Today, our topic is effective business communication. To effectively communicate, we must realize that we are all different in the way we perceive the world and use this understanding as a guide to our communication with others. Tony Robbins. Today, we welcome Dr. Sandra Folk, who is the founder of drsandrafolk.com, a business communications training company working with business executives whose first language is not English and business executives whose first language is English, both situations in which the art of communication is the language of leadership. Dr. Folk is hired to deliver her highly effective 8-week coaching program by human resource departments of major banks, engineering companies, commercial real estate companies, governments, and by individuals. She holds a doctorate of education from the University of Toronto. Welcome, Dr. Sandra Folk.
Thank you very much. I'm very excited to be here, and I'm glad you invited me to participate in your podcast. This is great.
Absolutely, and welcome. And how did you start with this? Because I always like to know beginnings, how people arrive where they are today. So can you tell us a little bit about your beginnings?
Do you mean my beginning in business communication coaching?
Yes.
Well, I believe in serendipity in life. And I kind of fell into this business, actually. I was contacted, I was teaching at the University of Toronto as a professor of education. I was contacted by a colleague of mine in education and said she had a gentleman who wanted to improve his account executive's writing skills because it was really, really important for them to be able to write well because of the fiduciary implications. So they were writing meeting minutes of large stakeholder meetings. And so I said to him, it would be really expensive for me to fly me to all your 7 offices across Canada. Why don't you let me design an online program for you? And that's how I got started. And he believed in me. And he thought I was really smart because I was Dr. Sandra Folk. And that's how I got started. And so that's how I did it. And I started with online communication well before most people were doing online communication. And then I slowly kind of moved to actually doing business communication with executives and senior personnel and anybody who's a high potential person in a large organization. And here I am.
All right, that is awesomeness. And what you do is so critical, especially for leaders and people that interact with other people that are subordinate to them, so to speak. So when you're working with executives, just give us a snippet of some of the things that you do with them in order to improve their communication skills.
What I actually do with people, it's really important because let me explain how I do this. Last week, I had a meeting with a gentleman. I do a lot of work with some of the big banks in Canada, the major banks. And my clients are in Quebec, not in where I live in Toronto. And I help them improve their executives, and I help them to think about the way they communicate. And I also help them with the way they present their ideas in English. And this gentleman who's higher up in the hierarchy of the bank, who these people have to get his approval in order to be able to work with me, said to me, Sandra, you know, tell me a little bit more about what you do. So I did. And after I explained to him what I do, and I'll explain that in a minute, he said, well, they talked about getting English lessons from you. And now I realize that you do way more than just an English lesson. What I help people do is I help them understand what it means to communicate, because most people don't stop and think about what does it mean to be an effective communicator? And that is the key. And for me, the important thing is you need to stop and you need to think about what it is you're going to say or what it is you're going to write. Because if you don't stop and plan and think about how am I going to appeal to my audience, because your audience is most important. You're not communicating for you, you're communicating for your audience. So what I do is I help people understand, and I do this because I came up with I'm very analytical, and I came up with this little neat kind of package of how I help people understand what it means to communicate, because that's the key. If I can get them to do that, it doesn't matter whether they're sending an email, they're standing up and doing a presentation in front of their colleagues or clients, or it could be their employees as an executive. And I liken this to going on a road trip. This is my metaphor for communication. Because when you go on a road trip, I call it my 4 pillars of communication. When you go on a road trip, the first thing you do is you think about where do you want to end up? And that's my first pillar, is your outcome. And once you know where you want to end up, then you can go back to your starting point and plan your trip. And the same thing is with your communication. So now you're back at your goal. And once you have linked your goal to the outcome, you plan what it is you want to do. It may be an email. It may be a presentation at a meeting. It could be a one-on-one meeting with a colleague. And the third thing you want to think about is your audience. Because without an audience, there's no presentation. There's nothing there. And so you need to think about, research them. Who are they? What do they need? Think about what's important to them. It's not about you, it's about what's important to them. What are they looking for from you? What do they want to know? What's their need, and how are you going to fulfill it? And then the fourth thing is your words, because your words are critical. If you don't use the words that resonate with your audience and they don't hear what you're saying, you've lost them. Your communication has failed. So this is kind of what I do when I help people understand what it means to communicate. So 4 things: your outcome, your goal, your audience, and your words. And a perfect example of that is, if I may, one of my clients is a executive vice president of a large commercial real estate company. He said to me, Sandra, I have a meeting with this woman. She's of a different generation than I am. I said, what difference does it make? Well, she's about 60, I'm 30 something. So I said to him, but you need her to understand what you want and take it to the gentleman who you want to get to, who is the executive of the company, in order to achieve what it is you want him to do. You want him to lease property. So I said, look, forget about what generation she is, what generation you are. Think of it, let's plan. What is it you need to say? What is it she needs to hear from you that will resonate with her, so she'll take that forward to the boss? So we planned it out. Next day he had the meeting. Then next day he contacted me. He said, Sandra, it worked. It was great. Everything was perfect. because he listened to her and he didn't go in with a presupposed idea just because she was 60 and he was 35. And that's what I help people understand, what it means to be successful as an effective communicator. If you want to persuade you have to persuade somebody to do something, take action, to think about some content, what it is you want them to do or to understand.
That's I wrote that down. Outcome, goal,
audience,
and words.
And I will send you my 4 pillars of communication. I have a PDF of it.
Okay.
Oh,
I would
okay.
definitely love
Excellent.
that. Love that, because I think sometimes when we're speaking, we don't always take under the consideration the person that we're talking to. And I think one of the things that I heard you say is basically making sure that you are speaking to the person, period.
Right.
And sometimes we don't think that way. Sometimes we think about what we want, but in a sort of, I'll say, selfish way.
Yeah, you're right. And I don't even think of it so much as being selfish. I just think that we don't realize when you communicate with people, they need to hear what you're offering them. So it's selfish on their part in a way, because I want to know, what are you going to do for me? How are you going to help me? And if you're in business and you go to a meeting and you want to convince a client, you want to persuade them, you need to choose the right words that are going to connect with them. And a perfect example is this. I learned NLP, which is neuro-linguistic programming. And one of the things about neuro-linguistic programming is you always try to use the words of the other person, not your words. So if you want to convince them, you use their words first, then you say, however, and then you say what you really wanted them to do or to think about. So that is really the critical piece about communicating effectively, is always think about, well, there's 2 things. One thing I always say, my big important tip is listen more and talk less. And remember, it's about them, not about you. Think about your audience, because your words matter. And that is really the key to success with communication. And I can give you another example of a gentleman who had lost his job. And a lot of people have lost their job, since the pandemic started. And he was looking for a new job. And so he sent me all his material. And he was a very successful executive, worked in a company for 20 years, was a business consultant, traveled, did all this. And I read his stuff and I said, all you talk about is you and what you do. You need to think about how can you communicate, how you can help the person who is interviewing you to understand their needs and to be able to say, here's how my skill set could fit into your needs and I can make a difference for you. And when he started doing that, he was getting more people listening to him. And as a result, he got a job sooner than he expected. And it was really interesting. He said, I get it. I really understand what you're saying now, that I need to forget about all this jargon that in my work that I did for 20 years. And I need to think about me in a new way. And that's really the important thing, is about thinking about yourself in a new way and how you can be more effective in what you say and how you say it.
Yes.
Is it also true that we're so used to, quote unquote, communicating in a certain way that we forget that sometimes we need to revise the way in which we communicate? Which is kind of like what I think I heard you saying about this gentleman. He had to rethink about the way that he communicates. There was a quote that I came across as I was preparing for this show. It's by George Bernard Shaw. And it states, the single biggest problem in communication is the illusion that it has taken place. And I think many times we find ourselves in a place where we think we're communicating, and we're not.
You're absolutely right. And what George Bernard Shaw said is exactly what I said in more simple terms, that if you can't respond to what someone has said and give them what they want to hear, then you think you've reached them, and you really haven't. Because I think the key thing is to plan. Whether you're writing an email to someone, and people like write an email, they dash it off, right? They go, okay, there's somebody. You haven't really stopped to think about what is it that they said in that email that they want to know, or to provide, or tell them what you need them to do for you. And so if you took that time to plan it and understand them, not what you think you need, but what they need, then the communication will have taken place, which is what George Bernard Shaw said. You think that you communicated, you really didn't. And that is my strong belief about having to understand what communication is all about. And it's all about trying to understand people and what they want to hear from you. That's what it's all about, really, more than anything.
Oh, that's something to think about, because most of us don't think, like you said, we dash off our emails, we don't plan them out. And certainly in conversation, we don't always think about or plan out what it is that we really want to say and who we're speaking to and what they need to hear. So when you talk about mastering the art and the skill of effective business communication, are the 4 pillars the only thing that is involved, or are there other skills that we need to learn to have effective business communication, which also travels down into our everyday communication?
That's a very good question. And I like that, because I really believe the key thing is planning. Plan. You know, we have a tendency to open our mouths and respond before we think about what we say. And I really think that those 4 pillars, and I've spent a lot of time thinking about it, those 4 pillars are really the key to communication. Because I can't think about anything else, because I spent a lot of time thinking and analyzing and coming up with, how can I help people in the most forthright, straightforward, simple way possible to understand what effective communication is about, whether it's in business or in personal life. And if you think about times that you have been reactive instead of proactive, and if you took the time to have thought about what you wanted to say first before you responded, because it might have been an emotional situation, then you would step back and say, well, what's my goal here? What do I want to achieve? And how do I want to achieve this? How am I going to plan it out? What do I want to say? And all you need is, I'm not saying you have to spend half an hour. You just have to spend 2 minutes. Stop. Think about, what is it I want to say? And how can I say this and what is really critical, we don't always have every situation to be perfect and nice. Sometimes there's situations where it isn't so pleasant and we need to be constructive. Still say what you want to say in a constructive way, because you'll get further with that. So if you plan it and you know, I need to say this and this is my outcome. And once you know that, then you think about, okay, who's that person on the other end in a negotiation, for example? So when you negotiate with someone, you have a goal in mind. However, it has to work for both people, right? When you negotiate. If the negotiation doesn't work for both people, it won't work. It won't be successful. And then your words. The words are critical. So I always say, choose positive words, to say what you have to and say what you need to in a positive way, even if it isn't a situation that's positive, because you're going to walk away and feel much better about yourself and what you achieved than if you walk away and you say, I'm really annoyed, I'm angry. And I think that works in personal life. And I have to tell you, I just had an experience with someone like that. Someone I had hired to do work for me, it did not work out. I knew this person thought they tried their best, and I just closed the situation up when we finished and said, thank you very much. I know you did your best. If I said you were horrible, you didn't achieve what I had hoped you would, what good is that? What do I achieve?
Nothing.
Exactly. And I leave somebody feeling awful who already feels awful.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yes, I can definitely. And I think a lot of times in delicate situations, we try to be mindful, but on a everyday, all day long, sometimes we forget.
Yes, of course, we're human.
Yeah, sometimes we forget. And because I just you made me think about a situation I just had with my sister. And we kind of, I think I started, or she didn't like something I said. So
that's familiar to me.
That's family.
So the first thing I did, I thought about it. And the first thing I did was I told her, I said, I apologize if I offended you in any way, but it was not intended to be that way. That was the first thing I started off with. And then
exactly.
Yeah, because I wanted her to know sometimes we're human and sometimes we do our best, but it doesn't always come out right. Even though that wasn't, sometimes it just don't come out right. Let's just leave it like that. Yeah. And that's how I responded to her. And then I sent her, I love you, anyway. And then I think she referred to something in the Bible. And like I said, the only perfection is God. Man will fall short every time because we are human.
Exactly.
And she's like, well, I'm going to do my best to do better. I'm going to do my best to do better, but I might fall short again. So,
almost there. When it comes to family, that's almost guaranteed.
Yeah, so be easy on me, but I'm going to do my best. And it left the whole, which was in the beginning, sort of a negative situation. By the end, everybody was feeling great.
Exactly. And the same thing can happen in business.
Sandra Folk, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead. Sorry. I'm sorry.
No, I was going to ask you, what part does observation have in being able to have good communication?
That's a really good question. Again, thank you for asking. I think that part of communication is the words we speak. So your verbal, your oral communication. The other part that plays a big role is how our body posture, right? And so that's the observational piece of it. And from what I have read and understand, it plays a huge role about there's varying opinions about it, 70% or what, maybe 80%. I think it plays about 70%, I would say. And how we respond to people with our body posture and our eye contact is really critical. So when we want to deal with people and we're in a conversation, again, it's the same thing. You always have to think about them. And this takes me back to my NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, about how you look. One of the things you want to do is you want to look at people's body posture and you want to mirror how they're responding. So, for example, here's what I mean. If you're sitting in a meeting with someone and you want them to respond to you in a positive way, what you want to do is you look at their body posture, right? So if they're sitting up really straight and maybe their hands are like this, you do the same thing because you're really mirroring back what they're thinking. So it's the same thing as the words, but now it's the actions. Or maybe they're like this. So you go like this. Or maybe you look at their eyes, or you look at the way their body is positioned. These are all the nonverbal communications that you want to look at along with your oral communication. That will make a huge difference in the way people respond to you. Another thing is in your oral communication, one of the things you really want to listen to, people talk in different ways. Some of us speak very staccato, boom, 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 like that. Some people speak very slowly. It's really important to listen to the way people speak and try to mirror for them the way they're speaking. And these are strategies that you can use to be a more effective communicator when you're dealing, particularly when you're in a negotiating situation or one of those challenging situations with people. It really makes a difference because what you're doing is you're saying, oh, I like what you're doing, and I'm showing you exactly what you're doing. And so they look at you and they feel, I feel comfortable because that person is doing exactly what I do.
Okay,
Wow.
here's something outside the box completely. But isn't that something that some animals do? When, I don't know if you have any knowledge of this, but in a confrontational situation, one of the ways that they break down that confrontation, let's say among wolf packs, is by mirroring the one who's the alpha, rather than, they know better than to do certain things. So they end up mirroring what the alpha or the leaders in the pack are doing. And that brings down the tension in everything. I think
Go
ahead.
You're making me laugh because of our family, we've always had dogs in our family. And several years ago, we had a German short hair pointer dog, it was a big dog and very hyper and, a lot of energy. And it was really, it sounds ridiculous, but really he was my husband's dog because he was the one, my son and my daughter picked it out, but it was his dog. And the dog was not well disciplined. So because my husband just let the dog kind of do whatever he wanted. And I used to say, you need to train the dog. So we got a dog trainer who came in and she worked with the dog. And she gave us hints on how to deal with the dog. It was an alpha dog. She said, this dog is an alpha dog. So what you have to do is when the dog barks, you have to respond to the dog by saying, the dog's name was Atlas. Atlas, no, like the dog would say in this hoarse voice. And he laughed and thought it was funny and never did it. But I did. And the dog would actually stop and be quiet and not bark when I did that. And so it's interesting that you say that, but it does work because he was an alpha dog and he needed to be made aware that he was not the boss. We were the boss, not him.
Okay, interesting.
Wow,
Interesting.
this is very interesting. We're learning about communication in a whole new way.
I think we don't think about communication sometimes. We think about talking to people. We think about, we're in a challenging situation work-wise, and we know we have to go and talk to the boss. But we may have some angst inside about talking to them, but we completely forget that there is a way of communicating. We have to learn, like you said, we have to plan before we go in, and not about what we're going to say, but what we're going to observe first, and then model our actions after what we're actually seeing. So we can kind of like create a level playing field for the conversation. And the other person, your boss, should be in the same mode. So that's where your training comes in and is so powerful because
Yeah.
now everybody's getting that training, both the boss as well as the employees. They both know that they're not in there to make a challenging situation confrontational. They're there to find solutions. And what you're doing is giving them the tools to be able to do that, which I think is fascinating.
Yes, absolutely. So
Yes,
that
that's it
note,
in a nutshell. You're right.
how do people get in contact with you? Because this is so awesome, number one. And I think a lot of people would definitely benefit from what you do.
Mhm.
Thank you. One way they can reach me is on my website, which is www. And it's DR for doctor, DR Sandra Folk, FOLK.com. Another way is through my email, which is Sandra at drsandrafolk.com, or my phone number, which is 1-416-488-3994, or they can find me on LinkedIn, and I'm Sandra Folk on LinkedIn. So there's 4 different ways that people could reach me, and I love the opportunity to work with more people because for me, I love being able to help people. That's always been my work, is educating people and helping them improve their knowledge and their lives, because for me, that's really important. How can I help people improve their lives and become better and enjoy their lives?
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's our whole quest as well, is to be able to bring people on this platform that can make a difference in other people. Because
Yeah,
we can always be better.
Mhm.
right. You're right.
We can always be better. And sometimes just hearing it kind of brings it back to the forefront. Maybe I do need to work on that. I mean, just me listening to you, I just wrote down those 4 pillars. You're going to make this conversation is making me more mindful
Mhm.
of communication.
And that's what it is, to make people more mindful of what it means to be a good communicator, to be an effective communicator, and how to work with people and persuade them to what you would like them to do or to understand about what you are communicating.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
I can see a lot of room for this as we go forward, as we move out of this pandemic. More and more people companies are going to need your skills because, for one thing, people who are returning into the business world, some of those communication skills have gotten really rusty over a year and a half. And we've all communicated in a different way. We've used Zoom, we've used the telephone, but there's been no face-to-face. So it's, for many people, there's been no face-to-face. So these communication skills are really going to be kind of rusty. So you may be called on more frequently than you expect.
It's true. It really is. And I think that, the most critical thing we do in life is communicate with people.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's personal or it's business, we are always communicating with people. And I think that to me is the most important thing, is to really, you have to listen to people. You have to hear what they're saying before you say anything or before you write anything. And if you listen more than you talk, you're better off. This gentleman I know, who is a CEO, who is of a huge company, a Canadian company, on his LinkedIn profile, he says, you can learn more by listening than by talking. And I think that's really important. That's critical. Because if you do, then it involves all those 4 things I've talked about.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and then what's the other one? We have 2 ears and 1 mouth.
Yeah.
That was a plan for that. So you could listen more,
Mhm.
So
And
yeah.
as
Wow.
you talk about listening, it's also the issue of there's a difference between listening and hearing. You can
Yes.
hear, and not be listening. And
You're
that
right.
happens a lot.
Absolutely.
Yes,
So can you talk a little bit about that, if you can, about in the form of communication, what it means to the difference between hearing and listening in communication?
I think that has to go back to my example I gave you before about the example of the vice president who said to me, well, he had a meeting with this woman and he had to convince her because he had to get to the CEO of the company and she was kind of the barrier to get there, or the gatekeeper, I would call her. And I said to him, you've already decided that this isn't going to work, right? So he had already thought in his mind, this isn't going to work because of, and I said, stop, think about this. Go in with an open mind and listen to what she's saying. Don't just hear. Hear means to me, it goes in one ear and it outs the other. Whereas if you listen to what she was going to tell you and you absorbed that and you took it, internalized it, and stopped to think about it, then you would be able to answer in a way that would be meaningful. And that's what he did. He listened and he heard what she had to say. And he said, oh, she was actually saying things that I really thought. Surprise. And so once he heard that, then he could add to the conversation. And she went away saying, yes, I hear what you're saying, and it meshes with what I'm thinking. So she was able to take it forward to the CEO, and he got what he wanted. And that's the difference between listening and hearing.
Thank you.
Definitely internalizing
Yes.
what's being said to you. Wow. This is definitely a new spin. It's just making it more mindful of how you talk to people.
Yes.
You know?
Yes. Be more mindful. It doesn't matter who you talk to. It doesn't matter.
It could be the person in the grocery store. It could be the grocery store clerk. It could be anybody. Most of us hear, but we don't listen.
It's so true. And, I think about this. I love children. That was my background in education. I love children. I love little kids. I love hearing what they have to say because they're so creative and spontaneous. And a lot of times people don't listen to children. They just assume that they want them to behave a certain way. And they don't hear what they're saying. And they say so many smart, clever things that are so creative. However, people don't listen. They don't listen to children because they say, the old saying, children should be seen, not heard. But they need to be heard because they offer a lot of interesting information. And I learned that when I was teaching and when I did my doctorate degree, I went into teachers' classrooms and worked with the children in the classroom. And it was very fascinating. I was in a teacher's classroom who I worked with for many months to collect data. And the child who they considered to be, like, quote, the least capable in the classroom came up with the most amazing, and he let me teach. And he came up with the most clever idea. And I said afterward to the teacher, you see, you made this assumption about this child because, he's late for school and, he's kind of slovenly. And look of all the class, he was the only person who came up with a smart answer. Wow. And he said, yes, you're right.
Yeah, I'm going to put, because you are an educator and you work with children, and we're talking about communication. And we're talking about communication in the business world. How important is it for us to either validate or teach children communication skills? Because most of us in adulthood are communicating less effectively than we did when we were children. Children are kind of outright. They say what they have to say and they're done with it. And that's the way other children respond to them. But as we grow older, we get into such a convoluted way of communicating with each other that we need someone like you to come along and break it down for us so we can effectively communicate. So why is it that as adults, we don't communicate well? Whereas children communicate very well. So I'm just going to leave that out there. I know that's a convoluted question.
No, it's not really. I have a good answer for you.
Okay.
Because I've worked with children and I've worked all the way in the spectrum of adults. Because when children go to school, they're shut down by the teachers. And as you move up the ladder in school, you're not given the chance to express what you think.
That's right.
And I know I've been there. I've been in classrooms. I've watched teachers teach. I work with children. I was a classroom teacher. And I know that we're not taught how to communicate. Go to business schools. Do they have courses on communication? They don't. I was just talking to somebody about this. They do not have effective courses in business communication on how to be a good, effective communicator. You go into college or university. Most of them, I'm not saying all of them, do not have an entrance qualification about how to communicate. You leave college or you leave university, and in most courses, most professional courses, there is never any course that teaches you how to be an effective communicator. Go online and look at syllabuses, look at courses. You will see that there is very little. Very little. So you're never taught you're taught how to write, of course. This is right, this is wrong. When you're in college, you have to write essays. You write them for the professor. You don't write them for you. You pad them. You write in exactly how many words you need to write, right? As you said, it has to be, 5,000 words. So you quickly, you work at your computer, 5,000 words, perfect, send it in. I gave the professor what he or she wanted. You leave university, and this is a really big thing because I have spoken to business leaders and they say that students come out, they look for jobs, and they don't have good soft skills. They don't know how to write and they don't know how to present. And this is what happens in business. So they go ahead in business. And what happens is you're not taught how to communicate effectively in business, really. Nobody really teaches you that. Or if you're an executive and you're a corporate leader and you move up the corporate ladder, you forget what it's like to be down there. You're so busy worrying about running the organization. You don't think about, well, hey, so-and-so in this department needs me to be better at the way I communicated with that person so that they understand exactly what I want. And that's what happens with executives in top corporations. They forget about what it means. They're so focused on what they have to do and what they need to achieve, their outcomes, their goals. And I think that that's a big problem in business with executives.
And it was funny you started talking about the soft skills, because here in Maryland, the educators were getting together to start to work with the high school students on some of those soft skills, because they do not know, they know the computer, but they don't know Word. They do not know how to create a business email.
Right.
And Lord help the communication.
Yes.
And because the schools aren't, like you said, they aren't teaching that.
No, they're not. They really are not teaching that. And I know that for a fact. I mean, I was involved in education for a long time. So I understand that piece. And I guess that's part of what I bring to the table when I work with people is I understand that they don't really know. And even my clients who, like one of my clients who is in province of Quebec, English is not the first language, French is in Canada. Quebec is French, very much French speaking. And I work with him because he needed to improve his English communication skills. He's a vice president. He needs to be able to go online in Canada and communicate in English, not in French. And he said, I'm afraid to open my mouth. because I don't want to look bad. And so I work with him to help him improve his English communication. And he said to me after 3 sessions, he said, you know, Sandra, I realize now I do the same thing in French. And now I need to stop and think about, before I talk or before I write, I need to stop and think about what it is I'm going to say or write. And in French. And he didn't realize that until he worked with me. So that's what happens. Usually I do, like, as you noted before, 8 sessions. By about the 3rd session and halfway through for sure, people start to realize, oh, so now I need to stop and I need to think about what it is I need to do before I say or write, and how I'm going to say it or how I'm going to write it. It's amazing transformation, really amazing, of what happens with the people I work with.
Like I said, there are people who need your skill.
Oh,
And it's so lovely to know that you are here and available, and that you do this type of work, because I haven't seen anyone else doing this type of work.
I agree. I really believe that I'm one of the few people who does this.
I definitely see your skills really being valuable at the high school level, junior high school level, so that these people,
College level.
oh,
I have
yeah,
run into some young
absolutely.
people who have told me that they were graduating from college, and I asked them to write a simple sentence, maybe 2 simple sentences, to communicate one simple idea.
They can't do it.
No,
They can't do it.
No,
it's,
I know.
it's amazing.
It's our education system, be it in the US, be it in Canada. It doesn't matter. It's still the same issue.
Communication is key.
Yes, it
Yes.
is.
Communication is key.
Absolutely.
I really am so glad that you stopped by this afternoon
I
with
am
us and
too.
spent time. You taught me some things. I'm going to think twice about what I say, and I'm going to think twice about what I write.
Well, thank you. I'm glad that I could offer that to you and that I could make a difference.
Absolutely. And again, how can people get in touch with you?
Okay, I wish I could actually write it down so that they could see it. So perhaps maybe you could do that for me. They can reach me at email. I always answer every email, always, because that's something that's important to me. So it's Sandra at Sandra, it's DrSandra.Folk.com. That's my email address. My phone number is 1-416-488-3994. My website is www.drsandrafolk.com. That's www.drsandrafolk.com. And LinkedIn. I always answer all my LinkedIn connections when people want to link with me. So they have those opportunities. Contact me. I will answer you right away. And on my website, you can set up a 30-minute complimentary meeting with me to see if I'm a good fit for what you're looking for in helping you improve your business communication skills and become a more effective communicator. So those are the different ways that I could do that. And I also have those 4 pillars, I believe, on my website on the resources section. So I will gladly send those to you in an email so that you have them and you can see them and share them with other people. And I have a newsletter that goes out. So if you sign up for a complimentary meeting or download my ebook, you will automatically get on my newsletter list.
This was definitely a different interview for us, but it was also an eye-opener and also a check-in. You know, how am I communicating? Now, after speaking with you, it's like I'm going to be mindful of the 4 pillars.
Well, great.
So thank you so much for that, Sandra, and we're looking forward to more collaborations with you. We enjoyed your company and can't wait to do this again.
Thank you so much. I loved working with you today. You've been great, the both of you. You're great hosts. You really make the conversation flow easily, and you make your guests feel very, very comfortable participating in the podcast. So thank you. It was great. I really loved doing it.
Thank you.
Your business, through Just Minding My Business Media, has exposure on internet radio, major social media platforms, and now TV. Through Just Minding My Business, dynamic digital marketing platform. Don't listen to the word on the street. Hear it for yourself. Visit jmmb.assistercircle.org to learn how you can take your business, your vision, to the next level. Voiceovers by RCH VoiceWorks, for when you want to be heard. Call 443-620-4115.
Thank you for tuning in to Just Minding My Business Radio. I'm your host, Ida Crawford.
And I'm your co-host, Ruth Haskins.
We hope you enjoyed the show and appreciate you stopping by. Many blessings to you and yours.